Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. My camera won't work. So at least my mic is. That's good. I don't know what's wrong with that. Oh, well. Must have broke my webcam just using it too much. It's just one of those kind of Monday mornings. I typed to you in the chat. You guys are more chatters. How are ya? Is everybody doing okay? Looking here at my participant screen. Did you get to experiment a little bit with Windows Forms over the weekend? I hope so. We'll be kind of quick going through it, and there is just so much to it that you could always learn more. I've got some background noise going here. The dishwasher is on and it's making some strange noises, so let me know if it's bothering you. And we're going to start looking at a little bit more about using Windows Forms today. We're looking at lesson 13, and I think I'm going to grab this PowerPoint. See if it'll let me. Oh, that's not the one I want. Back up. As you can tell, there's a lot of videos out there working with menus and checkboxes and radio buttons, creating a WPF application. WPF stands for Windows Presentation Foundation, which is kind of the XML way of creating GUI-based projects using Visual Studio and C#. So it's a great facility and a great tool that you want to take a look at too. We use Windows Forms in our class just because it's just so heavily used. And we want to make sure that you guys know about it, about Windows Forms. I'm looking for the presentation I want, which is going to be posted up here with one of these videos, so you have access to it, but it is not being nice to me right now. Well, I've just got something messed up, so we're going to have to come back to that. I think that we'll just go ahead and take a look at creating a new application using a Windows form. And as we go through that, we'll be talking about the things anyways, because who needs those silly PowerPoints? So let's open Visual Studio. Actually, I'm just kidding. They're awesome and very helpful, but not worthy of delay. Oop, I got Visual Studio 2019 open. Just one of those mornings. I need 2017, unfortunately. And I want to create a new project. So if you weren't with us last time or you didn't get much luck creating a Windows form, make sure that you work along this time and let me know if you have any trouble. Now, some of you might be working, I know, with just one monitor at home. Be sure to watch Zoom videos and things if you need to work effectively. The little tool that's up here in the top, you should be able to use that drop down and tell Zoom to not be maximized, and then you can move it around. And I apologize if you should already know that. I've run across some people that don't. It's totally understandable. So you can run my Zoom application side by side, your Visual Studio instance, of course. I want to create a new Windows Forms app, and for this application, we're going to create one that's going to use our audio CD form, or class, I mean, and let's just call it something like that, audio CD form. So we already have our other projects named audio CD, and this will go right along with them. Remember, don't add to source control unless you're already connected to TFS. A couple of other things. In Discord, because I'm creating projects here and bouncing around, in Discord, in our C# server, under our general text channel, is the link for today's attendance. Also on Discord, there's a TFS channel now, and this TFS channel has some things posted in it, like videos of working through connection problems from home, what to do if your project has decided it's a GitHub project instead of a TFS project. And if you run across any other problems, let me know, or you can post things to this TFS channel. Let's try to keep some information together here to help everybody. So I'm ready to create my audio CD form project. If you remember from last time, we've got our form design area here in the middle of our screen. Someone's talking. Let me see what's going on here. No, I'm not sharing. Thank you. Would you like me to? How about I go back to what I was just showing you that I didn't show you? I should have like some song playing in the background, Blue Monday or something. On Discord, in our C# channel, our server, under the general channel is the link for attendance. There is a new channel, TFS. And in the TFS channel, we have some helpful videos and links to problem-solving things that are common. So let me know if there's anything else you want to add. Let me get the chat open here. Trying to get everything set up to work at home. And like I said, now my webcam is quit, but I probably did something to it. Got another monitor going to watch Zoom stuff. Okay, can you see my screen? I created a new project here, and I made it a Windows Forms project. And I named it Audio CD Form. Now this project is going to use our Audio CD class that we created last week. So let's get started. First of all, when I'm working with a form, I mentioned last time I like to have the toolbox open, so I just pin it to the screen so that it doesn't auto hide. And then I have my toolbox available to me while I'm working. I usually use the default layout and have my Solution Explorer in my Properties window. If you have multiple monitors, of course, as a developer, you're going to have, some of these windows off in other places to be effective. That's why us developers need so many monitors, right? Now, for my form, I want to change some of the properties on my form. First of all, I'd like to change the text property to change the title of my form. So this is going to be our audio CD input form. And let's see what else we want to change. I'd like to change the back color. Any change that we make like that to our form is going to become like the default properties for our application. So let's go change our back color. Let's see, what do we feel like today? Our background color, I'm going to go with Peru, and you can pick any color that you like. I want to do a 4-color. And I think I'll try, let's see how maroon looks on that. Maybe good, maybe not good. Now, my fonts are usually a little small for me for demonstration. So I'm going to change my default font size. And let me expand this just a little bit. I think I'll go to a 12-point font. Now again, as I add new controls to my form, they'll take these defaults that I've created. Now this font, the sans serif font, is one that should work good for us. What does that mean? Where is, probably learned that in like first grade or something, right? So it means that font doesn't use serifs, those little fancy lines at the edges of things. And that's really important to us as developers, because we want each letter to take up the same amount of space so that we can properly align things on our form. And if we use a font that is using serifs, each character can be a different size, and it can be very hard to align our information. Okay, so that font will be fine. Now my form size really grew when I changed the size of that font, so I'm going to make my form a little bit smaller. Really need it to be giant like that. So that should be some good settings. I've changed my default settings, and I think I'll be happy with that. Now I'd like to make this form a form where people could enter in information about our audio CD. So let's kind of review what we had there. I have our old audio CD class project open, and you don't need to open it. I'm going to put this code in the chat for everybody, but if you have it, you can open it. In our audio CD class, we created an audio ID, album, num tracks, and a cost. Now I'm just going to copy this class part. Come on, copy the whole thing. And I should be able to paste it. Where was that handy little? Okay, see if you can copy that. Now, where do we want to paste it? In our new project. I have some weird icon going here. Okay, every place else, just not in Visual Studio. Let's see if I can close it. Oh, I'm annotating or something. Where to paste it? Okay, in our new project, we need to be in our audio CD form project. Let's add a class, and I'm going to call it CD. And I'm going to select just this class part, so I'm going to leave the namespace with this new project, and I'm going to paste in that information from the chat. Now let's make sure everybody's got everything okay. How you doing? Were you able to copy it? Now there's lots of ways that we could have done that. We could insert. So if I'm looking at my project, I could add an existing item and go to the project that had that audio CD class file and click on that file to add it to this project. I could have just copied and pasted the file within our file system, so lots of different ways. We decided to just copy and paste the actual text code so that I could share it really easily through our chat. Now let's update our class. And as we update our class to add comments, let's make sure everybody's got all the right information so we're ready to go. First of all, in our class statement, I'm going to add 1, 2, 3 slashes and say this class defines an audio compilation. Now under our class statement, I'm going to add that # region statement, and I'm going to say private fields. And in parentheses, I'm going to say these are our instance fields. And after them, I'm going to do # and region. Remember, that just gives us that little minus sign where we can collapse this down as a group. Now, we could have comments and things like that, too, for each of these. I know a former student that works at one of the, like DST or something, one of the big companies in town, and they're required to comment every property. So he would have to have the // comment, the XML comment for each property in his application. Speaking of which, don't forget Wednesday, we're going to have, don't forget, I hadn't told you yet, I moved our guest speaker from last Wednesday to this Wednesday. So we'll have Frankie talking Wednesday, and he'll be on Zoom. So we'll give him, our first hour or so, and then we'll probably spend a little time after that working on an application, get a little bit more practice, but we'll wait and see how that goes. If you guys have a lot of questions, it could go a little bit longer. If everybody's pretty quiet, it could go a little shorter. But that'll be Wednesday, don't forget. So if you talk to anybody who's been attending our Zoom sessions later, remind them Frankie is going to be here on Wednesday. Now, he works at Jack Henry. And the thing about Frankie is, before he got out of school at OTC, he had a job offer, and he actually didn't stay at that company. It was a very good. He didn't stay there very long. Got the opportunity at Jack Henry. So he's had a lot of opportunity since being an OTC student. So he's a good person to ask for advice. Now, I'm going to do another pound sign region statement. These are going to be my public properties. So it's my getters and setters. Now, I have one kind of a simile comparison story basically about getters and setters that I was able to tell the afternoon class while we were still in session, but not you guys. Whenever we think about our private class fields and our public properties, we can kind of think about them as a bar, in a bar with drinks. And I haven't been spending a lot of time drinking at home. The cabin fever is setting in, but I haven't gone that route. But I want you to think about our public properties that way. So our private class fields are like all of the liquor and the supplies behind the bar. Our public properties are like the items that are on our menu. Like we say, you can have a Manhattan or a Long Island iced tea or whatever kind of drink there is. When we order that drink, that public property, we ask for the bartender to get it for us. So even though we might know how to make that drink directly, we could make it ourselves, we're not allowed to do that. We're not allowed to go back behind the bar and touch the alcohol directly, right? We have to go through the bartender, and the bartender takes our order, mixes it up depending on how they want things done, and then gives it back to us. And that's exactly what a getter and a setter is like. It's like, I want to know what the value of the audio CD field is. Well, you can't just access it directly. You must go through the audio ID property to find that out. Maybe there's something I want to do in this getter to give them the right information. We'll see. So my property, again, is just kind of like the gatekeeper. Now I have all of our public properties. We had audio ID, album, number of tracks, and the cost. And after the cost is the end of that region. Now the next region we have is constructors. I want to comment on our constructors a little bit more. Our first constructor is the default no-R constructor. So remember, when we did not have a constructor at all in our class, C# created this no argument or no property constructor for us and used it to create a default null instance of our class. Now the next constructor is a constructor with data fields. So we could have other constructors, right? I could have a constructor that only takes the audio ID and sets some sort of default value for all of the other fields. However we want to set up those constructors. For our class, we decided that these two was probably enough. Then I can do my end region. That's the end of our constructors. Now next we have our methods. So these are our instance class methods. Now when we copied our calc value method over, we lost the fact that we wanted this to be a static method. Do we still want that? I think we do. Let's put that in. Oh, look, it gets all messy. It says, I don't know what you've got up here for audio CD cost and all of these num tracks and things like that. It's just not working right. So we can't just make that be static again easily. Now, we could if it were really important to us, but for this point, we'll leave it as being something that is an instance method. Let's put a comment there for that. Oops, wrong slash, huh? This method calculates. Now it returns the. Now our toString overrides the system toString. Return a string. Perfect. And then my one last thing is I need to put the end region statement at the end. Now my class should be all fixed up. Let's collapse it. I think we can do edit, outlining. Can I toggle all outlining? Whoa, that was more than I wanted to. So I can. And I can expand a little bit until I find my different categories. So we have our private class fields, our public properties, and if we mouse over, look how handy that is, our constructors, and our instance and our class methods. So it does make it a lot easier for us to look at things. In order to really test out some of the form capabilities, I'd like to add one more field to our audio CD class. So let's start with our private class fields. The field I'd like to add is going to be the genre, and I want to add that because that'll give us an opportunity to work with a radio button. So let's make that be a char. And we could do a lot with this. We could create some different items that help us with that. But for now, we're just going to create a property. So I'm going to create one basically the same. Here's my setter. This one's weird with the two different ways of doing it. They're kind of mixing our different ways of setting up our getters and setters. Did I not copy them? Okay, let me get those. Missed methods. All right, let's get them. I'm going to start with that region statement. Now let's see if I copy it collapsed. What happens? Okay, see if that's good. That should be that whole region. Got constructors, right? Okay, yeah. Okay, so did you get the genre in? Now our genre thing, there's some different things that we could do with that. But for now, we just want to actually implement it in our class all the way. So I'm going to put it in that constructor we had that has all of our parameters. Getting hard to read. So after our decimal cost, add it. And then we want to initialize it. With whatever gets passed to us. Thanks, guys. All right, so that's what we would have to do to add a new data field to our class. So not too big of a deal. We don't need to do anything with it in our calculate method, but we do need to add it to our toString output, or else we won't know what it is. So let's see. We were experimenting with our CD value. I'll put it right there after that comment. So when we're working with something like this char value, we're going to say that like R is rock or something, you know, internally we'll carry the R, but we would like to display rock. So that's an area where we can end up doing a lot of work in our code. So for right now, we're just going to display that code, the R, and then we'll think about what we would have to do to go further with that. All right, so that should be everything for updating our class. So now let's take a look. I'm going to save it at our form. That's weird thing. In our form, I've got my back color and my fore color and everything set, and then I kind of veered off and started working on my class. Now I'm back to my form. In my form, I'd like to have kind of like labels and text boxes where users can type in the information about these different audio compilations. And so I need to probably have all of the different data fields that are in our class on here. Let's start out with a heading. I'm going to grab a label and put it up here kind of in the middle. And I want this text to say audio compilation manager. Let's make it fancy. Now I'd like for this to be a bigger font. I want this to be a bit of a heading. So let's make it be about, I don't know, 22. That looks okay. And then I want to move it over a little bit. Now, if somebody resizes my form, I can kind of say where I want that form, this heading to stay. Under my dock property, right now it's set to none, but I could change that and say, oh, I want it to dock up here to the middle. Let's try running this, and you'll see what I mean. So Windows lets us generate this form, and then we have the ability to maximize it. And notice how when we maximize, this label stays over here. So I can change that dock parameter on my label, dock, and I'll set that dock to the top of the form. Now let's run it. And if I maximize, it stays right there. So that didn't really help, did it? What if I say right here in the middle, now I've got to move it again. It won't let me. Just keeps moving it over there. So I'd have to do my alignment. It's just not letting me do it at all, is it? So you can see how the dock is like going to give us what we want, but it's a little bit different. So this might be why you'll see things at the top left corner of a form instead of in the middle. Different things like that kind of affects the way we design things, the capabilities that we have with our Windows forms. Okay, so I've got my title up here at the top. And the first thing that I want, if I look at my CD class, is the audio ID. So I'm going to put a label on the form, and I want this label's text property to be audio ID. The next thing that I want is going to be the album name. So I'll do name. How about we call it compilation? Since we know an album is kind of an old term. And then I want to know how many tracks it has. So all of these labels are just placeholders for where I'm going to, for prompts for our user. We want the cost. And lastly, our genre. Now, things are looking kind of messy here, but don't worry, we're going to clean it all up. Let's get everything situated on our form first. Now, when we allow people to type data into a form, or when we display data, we can use a label, but oftentimes for actual data control, we like to use a text box. So I'm going to go find my text box control. There's my text box. And I'm going to set up a text box for my audio ID. Now, when I create that text box, Visual Studio gives it the default name, text box 1. And for our other controls, we've been using that default name. It's like no problem. Well, for this would be really hard for us to know what text box 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is. Plus, it's not very helpful to others. So let's rename this. So I'm clicked on the text box, and I'm looking in my properties window. In my properties window, since I'm sorted alphabetically, my name property is at the very top. If you're sorted by category, your name property should still be at the top. It kind of keeps it at the top because it's really important. So I'm going to rename this. Now I'll leave it text box at the beginning, and I'm just going to name it text box audio ID. Now that's kind of long, so I guess I could change it, but I want you to remember it's a text box, so I'm just going to leave it long like that. Now, in my text box control, we have a lot of properties that help us with users entering data. So as you look through the different properties, you can try some things with them, do whatever you want. You can always Control Z if something goes wrong, but you can change the cursor that's displayed when somebody is mousing over the text. You can change your font for just that text box. We could change our back color for color. The maximum size, we could say how long this text could be. So for our audio ID, let's say that we want that limited to 5 digits. So we'll just type that there. You can't type any more than 5. We also could mark this as read only if it's something that we didn't want the user to be able to display. So many different properties for our text box. It's one of our heavily used controls. Okay, so there's my first text box. Now I want to create another one for this album name. So text box, I'm going to put it on my form here, and I want this one to be named text box. What do we call it in our audio CD? Album. Try to be consistent. So text box album. Now I don't need to worry about the length of that. We'll let them decide how long it should be. And again, any other thing that we wanted to change, we can. Number of tracks. We could use a text box for the number of tracks, but there's actually a control that will work better for us because we know the number of tracks is a limited number and always an integer. We can actually use the numeric up down. There it is. The numeric up down control is one of those little clickers, and I'll grab it and put it on our form. Where are you? Now for our number of tracks, instead of calling this numeric up down 1, we'll call it numeric up down track. Very long name. And I want to change some other properties. Now my numeric up down, since it's a numeric thing, I know that any data that I receive from the numeric up down is a valid number. I can change how many decimal places. We don't need to for this one. I can change the increment if I wanted to. Now I also can set our minimum and maximum. For our minimum, let's make it 1, and our maximum, gosh, I'd say, what do you think? Let's say 50. I don't want to go too low because you could have some compilation with a bunch of really small short songs, but we'll say 50. My starting value then is going to be 1. So notice that my numeric up down does not have a text property. So when I want to read the data from a numeric up down, I don't know what to do because there's no dot text. So far, you'll see that's what we use is our dot text. Well, within this control, I have this value property that contains the value of the data. So that's the property that I would use for numeric up down dot value. You'll see what I mean a little bit more here in just a minute. We'll make it all work. Next, I need my cost. I have no better control to use for a cost than a text box because it is something that they can have a decimal place in. So I have to use a text box. I'm going to name this text box cost. And then lastly, our genre. Let's leave that for a minute and we'll fix it up here. Now, what can I do about all of this ugly mess I've created? Let's line things up. I have a tool, an alignment tool that'll help me. So I'm going to start with my labels. I'm going to select the first one, hold Control, and select my others. Then in my toolbar, my alignment tool should be visible. Now, can you see this alignment toolbar? Sometimes it's a little persnickety and doesn't show up for people. You have to have Control selected. If it's not showing up at all, it's under your View menu, Toolbars. It's this Layout toolbar. Okay, so if it's showing then, you have all these different controls. I want to align all of these ones that I have selected by their left column. So I'm going to choose Align Lefts. So see how that cleaned everything up? Now I'd like to also make them an equal distance apart from each other. So if I look at my tools here, I should find make same height. I'd like them to all be the same height. That would be good. Then I would like to make the vertical spacing equal between them. There we go, that really cleaned it up, didn't it? Now I need to do the same thing with the controls here that we're going to use to enter the data. So I'm going to select them. First of all, I want to align the lefts. Then I want to make them all the same height. And then I think I want to do that same, make vertical spacing equal. Now I can go to label to text box. These two, my cost, I need to align the tops. And then I want to do the same thing to my number of tracks. Align the tops. My compilation name, and my audio ID. Okay, everything looks pretty good. Now, as far as laying out a form, we have so many different choices. We could set all these prompts to be right aligned so that they ended right up here by our input field. We can make all of our input fields the same size. We could put the number of tracks off someplace else because we think it's different. The options here for us are just unlimited. I'll make this a little bit smaller, like about the same size as the audio ID. We have the alignment lines that show up that try to help us keep things lined up also. So lots of great ways for us to keep our tools lined up. Let's run this. And there's our form. It's looking really good. It looks like here we're ready to type in our audio ID. Oh, you can only type a few characters, so I might need to make that text box a little shorter. I can press Tab and type in my album name. In my number of tracks, I can't type any letters. My cost, I can though, because I would have to fix that one up to make it work. Right now, we won't worry about too much validation. All right, so it all looks good. How's everybody? You guys okay? Everything working? You got a form? Are you displaying a beautiful form when you run? Give me a yes, give me a yes. Hey, thanks, Jackie. I'm worried I'm just going to start muttering and just talking to myself here because I'm just spending way too much time sitting in front of this computer. All righty, so here's our audio form. let's make it where there is some data already showing up in it when it displays. I needed to make this audio ID text box a little smaller. We'll make it about the same size as our number of tracks. How's that? Kind of line them up. Alrighty, so I want to create an event procedure. And last time when we were working on things, we put a button on our form, and we said that when somebody clicks that button, an event has occurred. They have raised an event because they've clicked that button. Well, honestly, us displaying our form is an event, right? It's the form load event. So if we go to a blank spot on our form and double click it, that will create our form load event. Let's put a comment up here. Form load runs before the form is displayed. It's like kind of part of our constructor process. So we could put code in this form load that we want to execute before anybody sees the form. So let's say that we want to say our text box audio ID, and we want to set the text property of that equal to something that will display on our form. Okay, let's run that. And there we see that our audio ID does have data. Let's put some values in our other fields. We also had our album. And remember, this is where I'm using IntelliSense, and I'm pressing tab or enter to just drop that field name, that form field, into my code so that I don't have to type it all, because we made those pretty long. Now, our album is also a text box, so it's the text property that I want to update. We'll make it say something like that. So this will act like sort of as a placeholder. Sometimes we do that in Windows Forms, sometimes not, but I want you guys to see how this form load works. Okay, the next thing we have is our numeric up down, and we already have it set to a value of 1, so we shouldn't need to do anything with it for our number of tracks. And then we have another text box for our cost. This is a really hard one when we're using Windows Forms, because in general, we don't like to have like dollar signs and things like that in our text boxes. We have to clean all that up when we read it. So we're just gonna make our text be something like, I want to put a decimal place there. What does it want? See, I want it to be a number because that's what we're going to use in our class. But I told Windows Forms it was a text box, so that means it's text. So we have to take care of making sure that's a valid numeric input. Now the last thing then that we would have will be our genre. Like I said, we'll be working on that in just a moment. So let's run this now and see if we have default values for all of our fields, placeholder type values. There we go. We do. So we have an audio ID, our name, our number of tracks, and the cost. So that looks really good. So let's go back to looking at our form. I'm in our form1.cs file code. I'm going to go back to the form1.cs design. And I want to add a button. Now our button, we could say okay or add or update or anything like that. Let's just name it, or we'll say the text is going to be okay. We're used to okay buttons. And then we're going to name that button something meaningful. So button. Now when I look at my button, the back color is kind of weird. There's a bug there. So I'm just going to change the back color and then change it back. And then it works properly. So just a little bug. We could change anything else we wanted to on that button, but that all looks good. So to add an event procedure associated with that button, remember we could double click on the button. We saw last time too, we could use the events screen to make sure that our events are properly wired to the appropriate control. Let's look at that after we create this event procedure. To create the event procedure that goes with our OK button, just double click on the OK button. Let's put a comment. So we're going to say that we're going to update the class data. So we could use our class finally. Let's create an instance of our class to be like a placeholder. And we use that default Numeric constructor. Lots of ways we can do this. And then we'll say, hey, for my CD, for my audio ID, let's set that equal to whatever the text box audio ID text property is. And on my CD, for my album, let's set it equal to whatever my album text property is on my form. Then we want our num tracks. And that is our numeric up down. Numeric up down num tracks. And we said that when we're looking at a numeric up down, we had to use that different property. Was it value? Let's make sure. There it is, our value property. What's it mad about that for? It says that you can't convert a decimal to an int. So we have to do that ourselves. We could use one of those convert methods too. I'm just going to cast it because again, we know based on the way we have our numeric up down set up that it can only be an integer and that it can only be numeric. So we're okay there. Now we're not okay with our cost. With our cost, we're going to say that, hey, looking at this text box cost text property, let's set that to be my cost. Well, it's mad. It's like, you've got this text box. You can't just say that that's a decimal value. Can't implicitly convert, so we're going to use the convert method. And we want to go to decimal. For text box. So that looks really good. Let's do a message box. And what I want to show is our MyCD 2-string output. Can we do that? I have to go ahead and call the 2-string instead of letting it just default to it so that the compiler understands that this will be a string value. So what we're doing, we're creating a blank or null instance of our audio CD, updating it with the values from our form, and then using our 2-string method in our audio CD to display that data to us in a message box. Now our form itself is just going to be left with whatever data we type in. So let's run it. So I'm going to say audio ID is 45. Now with a numeric up down, you can use the up down buttons where you can type in the number, and we'll say our cost, I don't know, cheap album. And then I'll click OK. Now here's my output. It says, oh, your audio CD ID is 45. That's right. The album, the number of tracks, the cost, the CD value, and finally my genre. Okay, so everybody's working. Are you good? Are you good? I don't want to keep going if we've got issues. Let's get them fixed. Yay! Yay! Now, whenever I'm working with a form, I'm using my form fields just like any other variable, So there's nothing about them other than the fact that I have to specify the form field and the property to use that as a field. So if I left off the dot text here, oops, and just tried to set it to the control, I would get an error. So just retype that faster. So you don't even have to think about them as anything weird. Just think about them as a regular data field. It's just the same. It's just exactly the same. So let's do our genre. Our application here is working. It's all looking really good. We can see all of the data that our user types in our class. So I want you to think about that audio CD potentially will become a database table, something like that. So when we are doing this, we could potentially be updating that database table. That's our goal as we work towards that goal. So in our form, I'd like to add in information about the genre. So our genre, we're going to give the user some radio buttons. Now, radio buttons are the round ones, and with a Windows form and websites now and everything has followed along with the same suit, if you have a radio button, you can only pick one of the options. So that's how our genre is going to work. You can only pick one genre. So our choices, let's kind of limit our user. First of all, I'm going to move my OK button out of the way, because since I want my genre to be a group of radio buttons, I need a container to hold them so that Windows knows they're working together, so that it only lets one of them be clicked at a time. So I want to find this group box control. I'm going to add that to my form. And in my group box control, you can see a few things. First of all, it's kind of like a little text box. The text property is what displays up there in the corner. And I want this to say genre. I'm going to fix my 4-color, that weird bug. so that it looks like the rest of them. And that's all I need to do for my group box. I don't need to name it. I'm not going to refer to it in my code, so I can just leave it. Now I can get rid of this genre label because I don't need that, since I'm going to use my group box instead. Now in our genre, let's say we're going to have a limited number of choices. First of all, I want to find the radio box control. Radio button, not radio box, sorry. Here's my radio button. Let's draw one here on my genre. Now a radio button text property is going to display beside the button, the little circle. So let's make this one be classical, but I want to uppercase C. Now, when we're working with a radio button, the text property just displays beside it. The action property, what's actually going on, is going to be the checked property, whether this one is checked. So right now that is false. Now there's a couple of other things that I can change in my checkbox property. I can change where the text displays. Where is it? Image align. I'll find it and I'll be like, oh yeah, that was super easy. It all is, right? It's just finding it because there's so many different properties and different things. I'll let you guys look and you can say, oh, wow, that was so easy. It really is. So my text is on that side. I can change it to be on the other side if I want to. But I want to have more radio buttons, so I'm going to find my control, add it again. Oops, wait, there was one other thing I wanted to change on that classical. Delete that one. In our classical radio button, their name right now is radio button 1. I'm going to change it to the radio classical. I am going to get rid of that word button because I don't want it to be that long. We are going to use it in our code. And then another radio button. Let's make this one be radio. We'll put that as our text property. And I'll do one more. We'll have to do rock. We'll make it radio rock. And I want one more just to even it up. We'll make this one jazz. So in our database, we don't really want to have all of these words like jazz and rock and hip hop. We just want a code. So we're just going to keep that 1-digit genre code. So we'll say if it's classical, our code value is C, hip hop, our code value is H, etc. So how are we going to do that in our code? We need to somehow figure out a way to know which one of these is checked. So there's a lot of different ways that we can handle that. For us right now, for our OK button, let's go to our OK button, we can figure out what to do with it here after we've got our CD cost. So if our radio for classical is checked, we want our genre equal to C. And because it's a char, I'm going to use that single quote, right? Else if, and I can use a else if here because I know only one of these can be checked. So I'll do hip hop. It's checked. And I want my CD dot genre to be equal to H. So this way it's very easy for us. We're just validating which one of the radio buttons was checked. And based on that, we're going to set our code. And we can say else my CD genre equals, let's say, for unknown. So now we've got the processing in for our genre. Let's run our application. And I can change things. Notice how when you use your radio buttons, you can only pick one because they're in this group box. When you do finally pick one, yep, it's a group box, Erin. You guys already got it, thanks. So I'm going to click OK, and my message box should have my new genre. Okay, let's do one last thing. In our audio CD class, we saw that when we get our genre, we get back that value. Well, it would be kind of nice if we had another property that let us get that string value, right? So let's create one. This will be a string. So when somebody wants to get this, we're going to have to do some code, right? So I want to copy that stuff from our form. Our if statement, just so I can make sure I'm consistent. Okay, so it's going to be kind of the opposite, right? So I'm going to say if genre equals C, I want to return that word classical. How's that? If my genre is H, I want to return hip hop. Jazz. And then finally rock. And then our last one, if we get to the L's, we'll return. Now, are we going to have a setter with our genre string? Not right at the moment, but if we did, it would be kind of a lot like our OK button stuff, wouldn't it? Should we move it then there? We can't, right? Because it's on our form. So in our class, we can't access things that are on our form, right? They're separate. We want to keep that user experience, that form, separate from this business data of what this class looks like, okay? But we can say, oh, we've got this genre string. Let's add that to our toString output. So our one more message. And we'll just actually use our property there. And I'll make it str so I don't have to redo all of those. Okay, so now we should be displaying our genre, like the J, and then the actual string that goes along with it. So let's make this one say genre code. Save it all. And I want to run it. Can't think of any albums. That's what we all want. And we have 5 tracks. It's a bunch. $1.23. I guess it's rock. Okay. So now we've got all of our CD information, our cost, our value that came from our calc value method, our code, and then our string for our genre that's associated with that code, that new getter that we created. We could make that string be a regular method, but we don't need to go to all that trouble. We can use the getter and setter automatic capabilities of taking care of that for us. And just say that's another thing that you can get or set. Okay, so that looks good. Can I see some? I'm going to quit sharing. Let me see some of your beauties. Awesome. Ooh, pretty. That is beautiful. I always do like gray though. Looks really, really good, Cole. Yay.
If I figure out how to unmute, I would have been talking.
How to do what?
Well, as soon as I figured out how to talk, I would have been talking that entire time.
You got it though. That looks great. Any trouble?
I had to redo it like 10 times because I'd keep undoing it. It would undo the entire thing.
Oh no. I wonder why. Is it undoing back to your last save?
I don't know. Every time I'd undo, it would take away all back to my first label, and then I'd have to redo everything. I'm like, oh.
That is really weird. And if you want it to do that, you know it's not going to.
Mm-hmm.
That looks beautiful. Thank you. Any questions, anybody? Beautiful. Looks good. Anybody else? Let's see some more. I want to see your layout. I thought I heard somebody was going to share with us. Let's see another beautiful one. Anybody else? Anybody got trouble that you need some help with? Let's see that so we can get you fixed. If you notice with these Windows Forms projects, I can send you the zip file, but it's not just code anymore. So now we're missing all of the setup, you know, that was done with the form and everything. So I don't like to send out the projects too much. As you see, I'll send out the class files and things like that. But I want you guys to get experience developing those forms and feeling good about the way all that works. Cole having to redo is unfortunate, but it gives you extra practice. So that's really good. All right, let me share again then. If everybody's perfect, doesn't need any help. I like that. Okay, so as we look at our form, everything looks really, really good. How's that going to help us get stuff done? Well, it is. The assignment last week was your Hello World. I talked to a few people getting everything set up for TFS and all of that stuff. Don't forget to get with me if you're having any sort of trouble. Lots of people having lots of different trouble. You know, we have people that are employees. They can have a little bit different of issues than people that are students only, and it's just crazy. So for this week, some things to look at in Canvas. In your overview section, remember this PDF document that is negligibly attached has really good chapters, somewhat, on Windows Forms projects. So there's a couple of sample projects in that PDF document that will take you step by step through creating some full-fledged Windows Forms applications so you can get some more practice. This club form example is one of the examples that they give you in the textbook or close to it. So you do have an example there already. We do have a discussion this week. We have not too much time for it. I think I'll change that to be April 15th. But I want you to look at the difference between compiled versus interpreted and just kind of make a statement, a discussion type statement. You might disagree with some other people about which is better, which is more efficient, all of those kinds of things. But I want you to be very aware of the differences. And then an assignment. Let's take a look at the assignment. This one I think you'll like. work with your study group on it, or just other people that you've gotten to be friends with and working partners. So this is sort of like a guessing game, but it's going to use some form stuff of Windows capability. So we want to change the back color of the form depending on where the user is. And now different people are going to interpret this differently, and that's okay, because I want you to use your best judgment in how you want this to work. Basically, it's a number guessing game. If they are closer to the number than they were last time, they're warmer, and the form should turn a warmer color. If they're further from the number than they were last time, then they're colder. So the form should change to a colder color. Now they say in your instructions here not to use a submit button or an OK button like we did. Use the text boxes on text change event so that the user can keep giving numbers and playing the game. Let's check something real quick in our project. I just want to try this event in our cost. Let's add an unchanged event. So far I've been having you double click on the controls to add the event procedure, but remember we do have this events view in our properties window. I'm going to click on that. Right now I'm looking at events that can happen to this text box cost. And by default, the editor went straight to the text changed event. Well, that's because that's the default event. So if I double clicked on cost, it would create a text changed event. But if I want to create one myself, I can. So I can type something in here, cost changed, and the IDE will create that event procedure for me with the name that I gave it, with the required arguments being passed in. So I'll just do a message box here. I'm just going to say changed every time this event fires, because I want you to see how often it fires. Now let's run this. Look, it's already there. We didn't even do anything. That was because of our form load. So when we put this data in there, that changed it. I'm going to click in it. That didn't cause any trouble. So every letter or every backspace that somebody does fires that changed event. Now, how could I get rid of that? I'm going to go back to my form, my cost text property, and I'm going to delete that. And now, it's still going to be in my code, but it's not an event that is wired to this text box. I'm going to go back to my properties and continue looking at my form. Okay, so as you work on the assignment, you're going to have lots of questions, lots of changes, try different things. When you change the form's back color, you might have to do some different things to get it to show that new back color. So kind of experiment with it, try some things so you don't have to have a lot of different stuff. Any questions?
I get a question about the discussion. Will it be unlocked sometime soon? Because currently it says locked and you cannot do anything.
Sure. As soon as I'll change the due date and unlock it.
Okay.
Make it available for you soon. All the dates are all messed up with all the rearranging of everything. Sorry. Any others that you found that are messed up like that? Okay, do you feel like you know enough to at least start Googling how to do this? See how to get this done? Have fun with it. Think of it as a game, you know. like you would really like to play, try to get it set up the way you want. If you want a different background, you can do that, you know, and be flexible with you in creating something that works well. Excuse me. So if there are no other questions, I'm just going to go ahead and end our Zoom session. And you guys can use this as lab time. I know it's not a huge amount. Keep you all so busy. I hope everybody had a great weekend and everybody's still healthy and has food and internet, all those important things. So, are you logging? Let me know if you need anything. Otherwise, I'm out of here. Have a great day.